All right, all right, all right. We are live. Welcome to Foodie Confidential, a brand new show here at the channel, at least for now. My name is Jeff. I'd like to welcome my co-host and creator of the show, Trevor. Trevor called me up the other day and was pitching me the idea for his idea for the show. I thought it was a really great show. We both come from restaurant service industry backgrounds, and there's a lot to talk about. It might even be therapeutic for me. So with that, I'd like to give Trevor the floor, and we'll go from there. Hey, Trevor.
Cool.
Trevor.
What's
Hi.
up, Jeff?
Hey.
Thank you for.
How you doing?
Thank you so much for going. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for co-signing my BS. But no, in all seriousness, I thought about this because when you go out to a restaurant or work at a restaurant, there's always that background thought or action that, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Or, what's really going on behind the scenes there when it comes to the business as a whole, whether it's the waiters, the managers, the chefs, the cooks, the owner, the restaurant chain, the food distributors, all this stuff. And then, coming from a restaurant background and everything like that, I've worked from the ground up. I've been a busboy, I've been a dishwasher, I've been a food prep, I've been a waiter, bartender, whatever you want to call it, all the way up to management. And, now I have my own little business when it comes to private chef and private catering and stuff like that. So I pitched this thing to Jeff, and, we are so infatuated when it comes to the food world. Everybody's watching Chopped, everybody's watching those baking challenges. R.I.P. Anthony Bourdain, his shows were absolutely great. And the topics are endless, and I think we have a great topic today. And I'm really looking forward to this humble beginning.
Yeah. Woo! All right. So our first topic. So Trevor has a whole slew of topics. He made this whole list, and we went through the list and we decided what's a good first topic right out of the gate to discuss and talk about on the show. And it was unanimously decided that tipping, one of the more touchier and controversial aspects of hospitality and service industry culture, whatever the ins and outs of whatever the industry, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. Definitely one of the more touchy subjects. And so let's just launch right into it. So tipping. Oh, well, first, let me just introduce myself in terms of qualifying my experience. I worked in restaurants for almost 12 years. I've done, I was a busboy, I was a food runner, food server, waiter, or server, whatever you want to call it. I also was a key holder / basically like a floor manager type position. And probably the position that I was most experienced in was I was a server trainer. So I was one of the, I guess what you call them, senior servers, or I've been in position of the senior server who trains all the other new incoming servers. And I'm in 5 years, I trained almost 100 individuals due to the fact that it's a hard job. And, it's additionally crazy because, being a server or in general, food hospitality work has a high turnover rate. As easy as it is to get a job in a restaurant, it's just as easy to leave a job or to lose a job or, get a secondary job. And so you need solid individuals to be able to train incoming servers to adapt to the brand and style and culture of said restaurant. So that's where my experience for this show lies more than anything. And yeah, today we are talking about tipping. Tippingy. Actually, it's tipping E.
Yeah.
Where do you? Okay, so
And I
first
think,
of all,
and I
yeah, go ahead.
think
Go
of,
ahead. Sorry. You can go.
no, yeah, no, I just think like the first way to start out about this topic, is that one, every single restaurant has a different tipping system. You know, when you have a
Yes.
$100 check and you leave a 20% tip of $20, um, every single restaurant has its own system in place that everybody gets paid. You know, I've worked in restaurants where busboys get paid a normal rate and not a tipping salary. You know, I believe I haven't managed a restaurant in New York in over a year now, but I believe it was around $8 an hour for tipped employees. That is always changing, and that's always different from state to state. I know some states are like $4 an hour. So that $20 tip on your $100 bill can potentially go to three, four, potentially even the whole entire staff. So tipping for me is very, very personal. I think that every single person in the restaurant world that has worked in the restaurant world tips differently, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Um, you know, and I don't try to educate people on how they should tip because that's their money at the end of the day. You know, however you spend your money is how you spend your money. But when it comes to hospitality, you are paying for a certain service. And sometimes you have great service, sometimes you have poor service. I think me and Jeff both agree on that. Like, we never tip under 20%, even if the person like has their head chopped off and they're running around in circles, because we've been that person. You know, we've been that person in the weeds, as we like to call it, who doesn't know left from right, and kind of just like kind of hits home. You know, being in the weeds is a
Well,
very
I'll say this. Let me say this. A couple of things. One, I do agree. Tipping is incredibly personal. It's as personal as food or clothing. Okay, like I can't have someone go out and buy me a pair of pants. You know why? I like my pair of pants a certain way. Don't go out and buy me. Don't assume how I like to wear my pants. Everybody wears pants differently. And then by extension, food. I like my food a certain way, or that's different too. Because there's some people who are like, I want to try it exactly how it's made, because they view the chef as an artist, and therefore they want the unadulterated creativity of the artist and without any customization. But like those two sort of very personal opinions, so is tipping. And, oh God, there's so many different ways to explore this topic. I'm gonna start off by talking about what it's like to go out with someone who doesn't tip in the same way that I tip, and the awkwardness of watching them, leave their tip, which
very
may not agree with my standards of tipping. And, at the same time, I almost want to subvert what they're doing, because they're not just representing just because they're paying for the meal. Like, let's say they're paying for the meal and that's why they're doing the tip. Or if we're splitting it or whatever the case, or I paid for the meal and then they're leaving the tip, you are representing both of us as a table. We are a micronation at this table where we are dining. And therefore, I don't know. I derive, especially when I go out to eat, it's working in restaurants has almost ruined eating in restaurants to a certain extent, in that I find myself I get anxious. I'm excited. I mean, not excited. I have anxiety. I want to make sure that I'm treating the server like a human being, like they are a human being. I've come up to tables where I'm like, "Hi, my name is Jeff, water or Diet Coke." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I'm just not a human being that deserves to be greeted." So it's like there's like a lot of sort of stuff. And then the thing is, Trevor is right in one sense. What a person does with their own money is absolutely their own business. And this is where this is going to lead to the overall theme of this particular episode. For me, my opinion is that even though I lived for years on tips and I understand that this whole industry works on tips, I believe that the system is flawed and messed up, and that it leaves too many people who can't make it work, that hustle work for them. There are too many people that that depend on it for money. And I'm against the whole idea of tipping to begin with. Now, does that mean I don't tip? Of course I tip. This is the system. This is the way of life. And more than anything, I need to pay forward what was what was always done for me. I always expected 20%. I always give 20%. There were only 2 times in my life where I gave less than 20%, and I regretted both of them immensely. It felt so wrong after the act was done. I wish I could have taken it back. I feel no righteousness or justification. And from there on, I learned a lesson in that no matter what, if I'm going out to eat, just tip 20%. Call it a day. That's just me, though.
Yeah. For me, it always depends too. Like if I go to a new restaurant and I get like absolutely standard service, like nothing was wrong, pretty much how you doing? What would you like? Have a nice day. That's fine because sometimes like I'm just going there to eat a quick meal. I go out to eat pretty often. I definitely have places where I know people and there's a little bit more of a personal touch, and that's a totally different tip. When you're seeing your old coworkers or your old friends or whoever on a personal level that's outside of that interaction of customer to worker in a restaurant, it's really a different experience. And for me, when I'm out to eat and my order's wrong, maybe I didn't get enough attention because I needed a refill on a drink, or the kitchen's taking long. Who am I to say it's the waiter's fault and I should tip less? I have no idea how this restaurant functions. I have no idea what's actually going on behind the scenes. And
The workflow.
you're right, and to take away money because of a tip because I personally had a bad time is wrong, and that's just my personality. That's just the way I see it. Now, just going like backtracking to like this tip system. Like, I worked in restaurants where they pull tips, and that basically means, people don't know, that it's a pretty much equal share, and potentially they have like a point system where a server gets 10 points, a busboy gets 7 points, and a food runner gets 6 points, just to make a bunch of words. And whatever the total tips are, they go from a point system because I guess the server has a little bit of a
There's
more
a
responsible
hierarchy.
job title.
It's a hierarchy.
Exactly. And then when it comes to pulling tips, I've always tried to do really, really well when I was waiting tables, and there's always someone in the system that you have to pick up the slack for, and that sometimes disencourages effort in a restaurant system. Like, why should I work harder if we're all making the same money?
You mean morale, restaurant morale, like the morale
Yeah.
of
And
working hard.
because personally, for me, when I was on my own, and then of course tipping out the busboys and runners and etc. accordingly, this was my livelihood. You know what I mean? Like, this is me, and I'm going to try to show to my manager or my owner that I am doing good at my job. I am succeeding on selling items that want to be sold, having good checks, having good customer feedback, and it almost made it like on a personal level that it was my own entity. Like this is my world, and this is how I want to lead by example. And then, of course, when you have a pulled system, that person that's doing what I just said is the dick.
Right.
Like, that guy's like, oh, Mr. Goody Two Shoe, I don't want to be him because he's a kiss ass know-it-all. And it is what it is, because maybe that's the truth and maybe it's not the truth. Maybe you want to put blame on something, but like I said, every restaurant runs differently.
Well, I wanna double back. I didn't want to cut you off because you were on you were talking about a really important thread, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. I just want to double back to what you were saying about like the service and how service affects tipping and stuff. And for me, when I was training people, the number one thing I would always tell them, there are two parts of a meal that, at least when I go out to eat, that I always check for as a customer. And again, even when I was training, when I had people under my tutelage, I would always say, first of all, there's the first thing, which is being able to read the room. You got to be able to read people when you're a server. You have to read what kind of customer, what kind of guest you have. Is this a guest that wants to talk, or is this guest that's in the middle of a business meeting? Is this guest out with a lot of friends, or is this guest solo and reading a newspaper, or are they solo and just sort of like very chatty? And then from there, I could determine what kind of service they need. There's nothing worse than the waiter that's over enthusiastic because they think that's going to get them a better tip, when in fact the over enthusiasm actually is a hindrance and annoying. For me, when it comes to refills, I always
so
would
much
tell
fun with that.
Well, yes, it is kind of fun. When I had when I would train these guys and these girls, I would always tell them about silent refills. I would be like, look, if you see that the glass is half full or below half full, don't even, because where I worked at some corporate places where, let's just say resources flowed as freely as water. And so, it was never any and obviously everybody knows that, the soda, the soda syrup is like, it's like whatever, 2 cents a gallon or however that ends up working out. It's basically, nothing. And there's a huge overhead charge to it. So it's like, always make sure a drink is refilled. If you see that drink is at a third of the way down or something, don't even say nothing. Just take the drink, bring it over, refill it, and put it back on the table. And you're really doing a good job if they don't even notice. And I can't tell you how many times people would come up to me and be like, "Hey, did you refill my drink?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, thank you so much." I was just like, "Yeah, I didn't want to bother you." People eating out love that, or loved that when I was doing it. So that was one way. Another way, again, that's part of that silent service thing. It's like the best service is that you don't even know that I'm here. The other super important thing, probably the single most important proponent of, I think, deserving a tip, and a good tip, or at least doing the minimum of your job as a server, is doubling back. We used to call it 2 bites or 2 minutes. Trevor, are you familiar with this euphemism?
Yes.
What, can you explain it for everybody what 2 bites and 2 minutes is? This is not a test. I just want to pass you the puck.
I mean, basically you are watching how a customer is flowing when it comes to their meal. Is this person a fast eater? Should I start getting ready for the entrees? Is this going to be a person who's going to be nursing their appetizers, and they're going to be talking and talking and talking and talking and talking?
Campers.
And when it comes to campers, and when it comes to a glass of wine per se, if that person orders a glass of wine and you see it almost on its way out, instead of waiting for that to be completely finished and potentially going to get busy, to get lost in another table, or talking to the manager or whatever, that person might have wanted another glass of wine, and now you've waited 3 minutes, and 3 minutes in a restaurant feels like 25 minutes when you're waiting for another glass of wine. So I would always tell the staff, like, when you see a glass of wine with like the last like 2 or 3 sips, ask if they want another one. The worst thing that they could say is no.
Right. And if it's alcohol,
if they say
no,
no,
you never.
Usually,
Hey, are you there?
I'm listening.
Oh, no. Usually with alcohol, the thing about alcohol is that's not that alcohol should never be a silent refill. Alcohol, as you said, wait until there's 2 or 3 slips and then ask if they want another, because alcohol costs money. Again, it also depends on the restaurant. If you don't do a silent refill, if there's not free refills, if refilling something costs money, you want the consent of the person. If otherwise, that would just be ridiculous. And the thing about the 2 bites, 2 minutes, what that means for anybody who out there who might watch this. Yo, hello? I think we have a latency problem. Hello?
I'm listening.
Oh, um, the other thing too
I'm
is,
listening.
no,
Yeah,
what I was saying
let me
is,
see if I
oh no, I think,
have
yeah,
better
we're
Wi-Fi.
talking over each other. Yeah, maybe it's a Wi-Fi issue. I don't know.
See if this works
Um,
better.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was just saying that 2 bites, 2 minutes literally means I wait 2 minutes or I watch them take 2 bites. And then I double back and I do what I feel is the most important part of the service, which is checking to make sure that they are satisfied and happy with their food. There's no greater affront to me as a consumer than if a waiter or a server, whoever, doesn't double back and say, how's your food? Is everything okay? Did everything come out though? Especially if they're very specific with their instructions. I got an allergy. I got a this. I got a that. I like this. I want this on the side. Doubling back to make sure that everything's okay shows that you care. And all these things
Right.
add up to, at least in my opinion, a minimum of 20% in a tip.
Yeah, and when going back to like what you were talking about with asking a person if they would another glass of wine, I love observing like family members and stuff. Like my mom is a Chardonnay drinker, and she will have probably 2 glasses when we go out to eat, and I know that she's gonna have 2 glasses, and I'll see the waiter come over when she's got a sip left. Would you like another glass of wine? And she'll be like, "No, I'm good right now." And then he'll come back and check, like, everything okay? Yeah, can I get another glass of wine? And I'm just like, Mom, he just asked you to, do you want another glass of wine? Like, um, completely messed up his flow. But, I think being in the restaurant business, you're very, very like involved with seeing how like everything's working and like examining and not necessarily judging, but watching everything. And I find that like when you're not in the restaurant business, you're in your own world, you're enjoying your company, you're enjoying your atmosphere. And the thing like I just said, like person asking for another glass of wine, like that's such a big deal for me. And then and then for her it's like, I didn't want one 1 minute ago, I want one now. you know but
Right.
it's always funny. It's always funny to watch that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's
Now,
there's one
here,
other thing we need to talk about if we're talking about if we're talking about refilling. I know this is supposed to be about tipping, but if you're talking about the refilling of drinks, especially like wine beverages and stuff, alcoholic drinks, that requires, depending on again where you work, that requires the necessity of the bartender and the intercommunication between a server and a bartender and the politics that come into play, especially when you think about it. And here's the thing that's interesting. It's always in the bartender's best interest to make sure that the servers are getting their drinks as fast as possible, because at the end of the day, the servers are tipping out the bartender, depending on what's again. I think that should just be a what's it we call it? God, what's the word? A disclaimer after every sentence I say, depending on the restaurant, because every restaurant is so different, from corporate to mom and pop open shops. And you have this sort of this sort of political situation where sometimes you have a bartender that's like, has mostly bartenders have their own problems. They got the whole bar to tend to, but they also got to be making drinks for the servers. And so you have the situation where you're trying to keep your tip game going good, but then you have a bartender, maybe you have a bartender that either A, is in the weeds or is too like slow, or B, a bartender that doesn't like you and is going to passively aggressively show it by making you wait for your drink because they know it's going to F with your money, which in turn F's with their money, but they're making the most money in the restaurant generally. And so they're just kind of like, they don't really care. And it's like a weird situation, because if you bring these sorts of situations to, depending on the manager's style, they may just like shrug their shoulders and be like, I don't really care. And then you find yourself having to make the situation better on your own. How do I improve relations or create, sort of lubricate the situation so that I can keep going and keep moving faster? I found personally asking a bartender, hey, you want me to empty your bus buckets? Because the bus buckets get full. If the bartender has to empty out their own bus buckets, it messes them up. A great way to free up a bartender in the weeds is to grab their bus buckets for them and bring them to the back so that way they're not stressing out about it. Again, this depends on the restaurant and the restaurant style.
Yeah, and a restaurant is such a team effort, and I think sometimes that sometimes gets lost
Yeah.
with whether the restaurant being slow or someone having better shifts than another person, or I wish I was a bartender but I'm a server. And the restaurant works as such a team. I really like to have the simile that it's like being like a harmony. The flow of the kitchen to the flow of the front of the house is so important. And you know if the restaurant's busy, that means that the waiters are making more money. That means that the owner is maybe obliged to give a little bit more money to the guys in the back, and you're paying the bills and the owner's happy. You know what I mean? Steady business and busy business is always important. I think a lot of restaurateurs will always say to themselves, I'm 3 weeks away from closing. I'm 3 weeks away from closing because every single time, tonight's dinner service is paying for last month's bills.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's dinner service is paying for,
Yep.
the liquor bill that we just bought, and it's just funny because when you pay for $44 for a filet mignon, I feel like $44 is like the number the price for all filet mignon around where we are in New York. And that's expensive for a lot of people. Like, that's pretty high end for a steak. When you go over that, you're like, look around you, see any famous people. But
When you go
that
over that, you're
$44.
probably in a what's it called, Peter Luger or Ruth Christie or
Yeah.
something. When you go higher than that,
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, wow, this place is making money, but people always forget about the cable bill, the rent, the you know electric bill, salaries for all the salary employees, and whatever you have on staff. And don't get me started with, which is going to be a completely other topic, like open table and all that kind of stuff, because all these expenses are taking dollars to pennies away from that plate. A lot of people think that $44 and whatever else everybody else is spending is all going to the owner's pocket, which is not true. But the tip system, you know, I think I could speak for you too. Like when we tip more, like let's say if we have $100 check and $20 is the standard tip. Like if I give them $30, I don't think I'm better than anyone. It's just like my appreciation of what they're doing. You know what I mean? Because being in their shoes and knowing that um I know what it's like, and I think I'm a pretty easy customer. I never really send food back, and I never really say this should be this way and that should be that way. Like I really eat anything. And if I personally don't like something, I keep it to myself, or I tell someone, who's with me in private. But to to take away money from a person's pocket when it comes to tipping, it's just really selfish. And you're almost like looking for trouble. It's like, oh, this didn't go my way, so therefore I could take off $5. And really shouldn't go like that. It's like, do we do that when it comes to retail stores? Like I just bought this pair of jeans and I really, really liked the way it looked, but I didn't try them on and I paid $45. But you know what? I'm gonna go send them a note saying, hey, you owe me $6 back because they don't fit my waist perfectly. You know what I mean? Like it's a very, very strange comparison, but at the end of the day, it's not too different. Um,
um, I will tell you this. Again, as we said at the beginning, as you said so brilliantly, tipping is an incredibly personal thing, and for all the reasons that you said and more. And it's something that is definitely, when you work in this industry, you are definitely influenced by your own experiences. I don't know. I feel like we have more empathy and more understanding and can, sort of know, like, for instance, a great example, you just don't know. I guess this applies everywhere, but you just don't know what happened in the kitchen that day or what that person was personally going through that day, where something might be off or might be bad. And then, it sort of influences the way that, or sort of informs, the situation and makes you want to tip a certain way or lack thereof. Then you have the people that are righteous and justified in thinking it's like some of them I feel like even put up their own numerical system, like, oh, you forgot a drink refill, that's 50 cents off your tip. Like they just sort of like put this sort of like this sort of thing. I once saw something on the internet that made me shudder in horror. There was some guy in the South who was bragging about how he, this guy gets off on this sadistic mother effer who gets off on doing this trick where he puts out 5 singles on the table and doesn't say a word about them. And then anytime he decides something doesn't go right in his service, he takes away a single. And whatever is left at the end of the service is what he leaves as a tip. But what made this go viral, what made people laugh about it was all the servers that were joking about this was in some Facebook group, was the idea that that $5, on whatever meal, like that in this guy's mind, $5 was an incredible amount of money, an incredibly generous amount of money to be tipping.
What do you get? A coffee?
Yeah. And then that they would have the authority or the ability to like sort of determine, oh, well, you didn't smile at me when you walked by the table. It's like they don't want a tip to begin with. They're super cheap. They just want to. This is just a game for them, And then, like I said, I was in a situation. I went out to eat at a chain. It was my wife's friend's husband who we paid for the meal and they were leaving the tip. And the bill was like $54 or something. This guy was pre-med. Bill was like $54 or something. The guy left like $3 and some change on the table, which I then had to remedy after he left. And I was like, oh, do you need change or something? And he's like, no, that's a tip. And I was like, oh, okay. I like didn't know the guy, never met him again in my life. But, and here's the problem with me too, is if I see someone, putting out the money for a tip or leaving the tip, and like I'm in like eye shot of like what they're leaving, I have to avert my eyes for fear that it is not what I expect it to be, because I will judge you as a horrible, terrible person forever. If I like, it will change the way I like view you and look at you forever. So like, I try to like go like, okay, I need to put my head in the sand because my ignorance will save my opinion of you if you don't leave at least 20% tip.
I have a great story. I have a great story when I was working at a restaurant in Florida. It was a very snowbirdy area, and come the winter, we would get a lot of French Canadians, and we would get a lot of foreigners. People from Spain, France, yada yada yada, but primarily French Canadians. And I actually had this waiter who spoke French and actually worked in restaurants in France. And I think I don't know so much about around the New York area, but definitely in Florida when I was working there, the common theme was foreigners don't tip well. And I asked this guy who had experience over there, and I asked him, what's the deal? And it's really funny. And I didn't know this too, but basically over in Europe, when you are per se a waiter, bartender, they treat the salary different. They actually pay you very, very handsomely and then tip less. So it's kind of like the opposite that they do in the States, where waiters and bartenders get paid very, very few dollars an hour, and then get tipped greater in return. So I said to him, I said, "Oh, so all these foreigners just don't know. They think that it's the same system that they have over there in their home countries. They think that these waiters are getting paid 20, $30 an hour. So, a $3 to $5 tip is more appropriate." And he goes, "No, they completely know how the system works over here. They're
Of
just being
course they
cheap."
do. Yes, of course they do. Well, listen,
You know, and
I want to say one thing about that. I mean, this is the awkward, unspoken part of working in the service industry that I frankly think might be even a tad not something that we should really discuss on this channel, maybe necessarily. But I'll say this much: in people outside of the country, what you were just describing, by the way, is how things should work. In my personal opinion, that's how it should work inside this country too. Everybody should just get paid well. Like nobody should have to friggin', again, there are some people whose entire night is predicated on the couple of tables that they have, and because someone is either enlightened or unenlightened or just cheap, and that waiter walks out with a $5 tip on a $147 bill, the restaurant economy system does not factor in cheap tipping. It only works. It's completely predicated. The system works beautifully if the tips are beautiful. And so what happens is you have this monkey wrench in the system where, yes, there is some culture shock, some culture clash, some ignorance. Some of it's willful. Some of it is not willful, meaning like people don't know. And the thing that I had to learn as a server is that you must never, ever, ever assume, no matter how much you want, you must never assume. You must treat everybody the same. And sometimes there are so many times that there are exceptions to what is perceived to be a rule of thumb. And I'll tell you, when you're in the ish, when you're really knee deep in it, like every day, this is your life. Because a restaurant is kind of like a universe. It's like a microcosm. When you're in there, it's your entire world. And so when you're in it and you're having a bad night and you're getting, and again, I love, this is when managers will be very political in these sort of ways of they're salaried, they're not, they have a safety net. Their night is not predicated on the mood of the people that are dining in it or lack thereof. And so
until it matters.
Until it matters. And it's just interesting how all of this stuff, all of these systems and policies and economics sort of work together to either make it because here's the thing, at the end of the day, and I really got to wrap up here. At the end of the day, a restaurant and the American restaurant tipping system is like a gleaming, shiny example of capitalism at its finest, where the harder you work, the more money you are going to make. And therefore you are incentivized to work. I know I was incentivized to work as hard as I can, to take on as much as I can, because the more I did, the more money I would make. And nothing is truer unless you're in a pooled system. And yes, you always listen, that's the way it always, in any system, you're always going to get a couple of bad apples. But generally, if you believe in the best for everybody, like if you believe in everybody can do their best, so you know what? You end up carrying a few bad apples. It sucks, but it's human nature, man. It's just the way that this stuff kind of works. Trevor, do you have any final thoughts on this subject for now?
No, I think this has been a great episode. What you and I both want to do is be informative when it comes to the ins and outs of the restaurant business, and have topics like this that are up for debate and discussion. And I think we did a great job, and I hope the people who watch this learned a little bit about it today, or people can also disagree with saying I don't believe what they're talking about. It is what it is, because
Totally.
Like we said, it's a total personal choice. But I hope we're somewhat entertaining for our first episode. I'm sure we're going to be able to get some of the kinks out and
we got to work
be a
smooth
little
out
bit
some
more
kinks,
fluid.
people. Yeah, we'll figure all that stuff out. By the way, if you are watching, or if this is your first time on this platform, you can comment. You can leave comments. There's a place on the side in the live chat where you can leave comments. Please like, subscribe, and share, and leave a comment. That boosts us up in the algorithm. We'll cap this off. We're gonna try and do the 2 of these a week. We'll see what we can do. Try and somewhere around in this time frame. So, or time length wise. So, thank you so much for joining us. Peace and hair grease.